trying to guess what the market is going to tell us. And maybe you're right, maybe maybe it's an evolutionary thing. Maybe we'll start.
The market will respond to excitement.
Yeah.
If you design something that has an excitement that is inherently fully integrated with lots of activities,
Right.
people will come there and then the market will respond. People will not come to places which are just kind of stretched out over long periods or long stretches of land
Okay.
that don't have any kind of attraction and magnetism to it. So I think it starts first with how you fix the visual and emotional experience. And then everything after that will be the market will respond.
Okay.
Will we attract people to Farragut that are from large cities? It seems like, many of the people in this area come from smaller communities and they're not used to high-rise living. You go to New York and, Chicago or wherever, and
Right.
there's just millions of high-rise buildings. But I'm not sure that that's the people we attract to Farragut.
Yeah, I think, and the other thing we all need to be thinking about is that the market that we're talking about may not be the majority of us in the room here.
That's true.
Okay, so in a way, we're sort of designing for somebody else, talking for the Gen X's and the Gen Y's.
But again, are these folks coming in to work in this area from large communities where they're used to this sort of thing? Or are they coming from smaller communities or?
I mean, Chase is from Montana, for heaven's sakes, and he lives now in an apartment condo in downtown Denver, so.
Well, but also, in a few years, I'm gonna want to have kids, and we're probably not gonna have them there. We're going to, at least something with a small yard. I mean, I'm certainly not gonna move back out to the farm, but.
You got that.
So there's also, I mean, even in my relatively, narrow demographic, there's change happening then too. So I think that Farragut could be a place where someone would come back after they've, they went away, now they want to settle down and start a family. There's a great market for that.
Then you got school teachers, firemen, policemen, library workers, other kinds of people who are looking for affordable housing that they could afford, and they don't want to commute at $4 a gallon, and they can't afford some of the lovely homes that we've seen all around the community. So it's a question before us whether we want to try and accommodate them or not. Let me shift the gears a little bit now. Think about Farragut. Where is the town center? Okay.
Campbell Station, Kingston.
I'm going to put put a blindfold on, and I've got to pin the tail on the donkey. Where should I put the donkey tail?
You had an answer.
Campbell Station, Kingston Pike.
Okay.
Campbell Station's become the major access, but the way they changed the road, it's actually probably more dominant than Kingston Pike in some places, as far as traveling.
Okay. So, any other nominations for?
That area, but my reason for it is because of schools. I guess I always think of the schools as being the center of the community.
The high school, middle
That's
school?
also where you get to Farragut from the nurse, so attracting people from, that's where most people.
So, not necessarily that this is a town center, but this is,
That's the center
Part
of
of
town.
that's the center of the town.
The center.
Okay. Any other nominations? Floor is still open. That sort of seems to be the place people gravitate to, the gas station closing, for heaven's sakes.
On a,
So are the restaurants.
There is no
Some of the
So are the
restaurants.
grocery
Not
stores.
closing, they've been closed.
Yeah. So are the grocery stores. How about Turkey Creek? There's lots of activity up at Turkey Creek. What if we took some parcels of land up there? Could we create a town center up there? Would that make any more
No.
sense? Why not?
It's too congested as it is.
Too congested.
Too congested. Again, there's times at Turkey Creek when I've told my wife at Christmas time, we don't go over there shopping on Saturday. It's ridiculous. And that's even true on a Friday night.
Right.
Can't find a
We
place to
don't
park.
have the arteries to support that.
No. I know
Okay.
some people who work in the Regent's Bank building, and at Christmas time, they don't go out to lunch because they can't get across the street. I mean, they literally can't get
Right.
across the street.
I wouldn't think it should be over a half a mile in diameter.
Okay, can you draw some?
Take that from Camel Station 20 there, and that would cover
So
that
that's,
area.
that's 5,000.
So move that to the
feet of
intersection.
bubbles. Right there.
Did I get it there?
That'd be plenty big, could be smaller.
That's
Okay.
a lot.
I mean, yeah, so
So
that.
what if we, what if we came down here, there's some vacant land down here, kind of close, and we could really do it the way we want to. Would this be a town center? Just
Like some of that's floodplain.
You can make it,
Greenfield?
you can make whatever area you want in the town center. It's the arteries that feed it.
Yeah, good point. This is a little limited here because we've got Campbell Station, we've got Concord.
It's limited present.
Presently limited, yeah.
Although Campbell Station up there is no more limited than Kingston Pike is.
What if we took this old Ingles shopping center here and some land around it? Could that be a town center?
It's not gonna be big enough. You got residential behind there.
And they also got 60 acres back there.
I got some land back here though. I could assemble more of that.
You'd have to buy that land from somebody.
Right. Well, I'm wealthy, I can buy that.
You better get some of your retail going then.
Yeah, so what's wrong with it?
There's nothing wrong with that area.
Well, the only thing that I think that doesn't make that work for Greenfield as opposed to the other Greenfield is you already have your town hall.
Ah,
So by virtue of the fact that your civic center
there's already something
is
there.
already there,
Okay.
it gives a real desire to make the dynamic of what you create in the future incorporate your civic presence.
Okay.
That way you've got government, you've got social, and you've got recreational, you've got residential,
Yeah.
all kind of mingling together and being a comprehensive. You move over there and all of a sudden what you've got again is you're starting to separate the nodes in a way that diminishes the importance and the power. And in this area, as small as it is, it doesn't make sense to start to minimize.
Okay. So, we've done a couple of little exercises here we're gonna try out on you. Chase, do you have the original town center layout here?
Old site?
Yeah. Okay, so here was a piece of vacant land, and you can trim this off a little bit.
When you say vacant, who, does the city currently own that
No,
vacant land?
no.
84 does.
Eddie Ford, all the way down the
Or-
road.
Here's what the site looks like now. It's just out the door here to the east, west. And this was the proposal, I believe, that was on the table at one time. Okay? So let's go to our recipe, and you tell me what works and doesn't work about this original plan.
Parking's too spread out.
Parking's too spread out. A lot of parking, I would guess, I don't know, was it 4 per thousand here?
No, it was a lot less than that, but the geology of that area doesn't allow for underground parking. We provided for parking garages and required that there be retail or, office space on the main level. But, just what we were talking about with the expense of it and everything, that it really wasn't something to be doable on the front end, but it'd be something to go back and do.
Uh-huh. When you say the geology doesn't permit, what do you mean?
Rock, sinkholes, that kind of thing.
Is there any place better?
That's why we provided that you could have a parking garage, but that your ground level couldn't look like a parking garage and had to have storefronts and that kind
Oh, I
of
see.
thing.
Yeah, sure. So you're just saying not below ground?
Well, sure, that'd be great, but really wasn't physically feasible.
Right, okay. All right, so the parking is kind of a sea of parking. What else? What does, anything else in our?
No pedestrian
Recipe, no.
walkway areas.
Well, they have sidewalks sort of here.
20-foot sidewalks.
But
And there was-
streetscape is not at all conducive to, living, working, and playing. You've got parking cutting into it, you don't have a mingling availability. The great example of a town was created in a fiction called Back to the Future, with the old movie theater at the end of the street, and there was a kind of a place where there was an amphitheater in the middle of the street,
Yeah.
and the stores were on either side. Or also, it was also in a movie with Jimmy Stewart
Yeah.
at Christmas time, where you walk down the street and there's a park in the street.
Right.
So what you've got in a good environment that is a mixed-use environment is a lot of park and open space that is conducive to causing people wanting to congregate there socially.
So what this had though, let's be fair about it. Now, here's the town square, kind of Savannah-like town square. Here were shops facing onto the square. Here's a little pond, lake nearby.
Let's look down at the circular thing down, just off the page too.
This is a roundabout. I don't know, this is sort of,
It did also have on-street parking.
it did have on-street parking. It looks like it had angled parking, not parallel.
That's,
It required street trees, the roundabout was a compromise, because they actually wanted roundabout from more than that, and we weren't real
Yeah.
interested in the roundabouts, so that was a compromise.
But boy, does it have parking.
Yes.
Keep coming back to that, don't we?
Does it have residential?
Hmm?
Did it have residential in it?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Couldn't have residential at the main level, but all the upper floors could be residential. And the minimum height, building height was 2 stories, maximum was 4.
Right. Got some attractive images we saw.
What was the square footage of the residential individual units?
That never got that far along. We didn't dictate it in the ordinance, it was just that it was provided for that anything above the first floor could be residential.
Thank you.
But these all, and these are.
It's like they had some alley walkways going through here.
It's a good building depth, really nice.
That looks almost like the outlet center in Sevierville with all the outlet stores.
Yeah.
It really does, it's almost the same footprint.
Right.
I think if you take the street parking off between and move the buildings closer together and put nice brick sidewalks or whatever and some trees and eliminate the parking that you have there,
Maybe parallel parking.
not even put the parking in there, put it on the backside or go up with it. You need less room when you go up.
All right.
And take the concrete jungle part of the equation out of this. And move the stores a little closer together and be able to have pedestrian walkway through the middle of it with no car traffic whatsoever. You're only
Okay.
talking a few spots that are in front of the store, so what happens typically? Those store owners get those spots. That's what happens.
Yeah.
They want to
Now-
park closest.
I've designed a few downtown areas. My criticism is that what I've discovered over the years is that you need a figure-8 pattern. Okay? So that when you have a straight street, you walk about 2/3 of the way down the street, you see the end of the street, you turn around, you walk back. Okay? When the street goes around the corner, and the stores turn the corner, then you're always exploring something that leads you on, so that people at the end of the street now aren't left out to dry. And so this is a pretty nice environment right here, but then it kind of dribbles away as you get further out, and there isn't a second block. There isn't. So you need 2 parallel blocks to make it work, from my experience. Okay?
I recall those buildings on the back side are primarily office and that type of thing. The main business part would be all
Probably
those
right
in
around
front.
here, huh?
All of those.
Okay.
But it's a mistake, again, my experience is, it's a mistake to separate your business use from your retail use, from your restaurant use, from your residential use. You want to integrate that as much as possible, because that's what creates vitality. That's what causes people to start walking on the streets. That's what causes people to want to take that office space, because their employees can come and be a part of that urban scene and then go back to work. You pull it apart, and all of a sudden, they need to get in their car to go get a cup of coffee at the other location.
And
Now,
the plan did not separate it. There was
There
no
was-
separation on that part of that.
Okay, so we noodled around a little bit and came up with another option. I'm not saying it's any better or different, but we started thinking about this figure eight pattern and parallel streets. And so we thought about, okay, so we've got single family homes out here. Instead of putting a big parking lot next to them, what if we backed additional single family homes up against them so that there's a transition at the borderline? So these would be small lot homes like you live in.
Identical to these.
Yeah. Sort of identical, yeah, these are pretty close together. And then we make the transition on our side of the development over here, and then we have, here's town hall, so we have commercial, we commandeer this street here and put commercial facing that, and then we have another block of commercial, town park in the middle.
Is the orange commercial? Is that what it is?
No, it's higher density.
Higher density housing.
Something actually really similar to this. You guys are familiar with this development over here. These are a wonderful, wonderful example of just a slightly higher density
Townhomes.
pattern than this.
And we thought, now we've got this Kingston Pike is about 10 feet higher, 12 feet higher than we are here, so maybe that could be tuck under parking. And you can have some opportunities for that. This then connects on through, and
We have parking decks in the middle there.
Hmm?
We have parking decks along the middle. Looks good on you.
And these would be, what Ruth was talking about, liner buildings. These would be a parking structure here with a thin veneer of commercial facing the street, maybe 30 feet deep.
And you need to put residential with their access to their cars from the back.
Yeah, right. Okay, and then you get, and then as you work out, you get higher and higher, or lower and lower densities. So orange is kind of
What's this?
mixed use here. This becomes small lot, single family, and working further south. Then another connection that takes you back over to Campbell Station. Okay.
Where's the intended recreation or cultural?
Good question. Okay.
Where's
So-
like a park where your kids can run and play?
So here was this kind of a central park here, and we thought this is already kind of an open space, so we could extend that a little bit in there. But you're right, we didn't have cultural.
And just to preface these and what comes after this, these are intentionally not final designs. All of the questions are not answered in these, so please feel free to point out things that are not ideal with these, because I'm sure that these are not.
I think you have way too much residential in there,
Yeah.
because we're here for a town center, not a new residential development. And from what I can see of that, there's nothing that's gonna draw me there, other than a few stores. I'm not gonna go look at a home over there. We want something for us to do. We already own homes. So having an amphitheater, parks for the kids, activities for us to do, shopping, that type of thing. But 1/3 of this layout right here is residential, and you're talking residential along the side. We've got a lot of residential space right now that's undeveloped, and with the economy, especially the way it is, there's not a whole lot of people buying. I think if we're gonna do something for the people who live here, we need something for us to do. Not to hope that we're gonna build some residential area. The cove over at Turkey Creek is a perfect example of that. That's exactly what they did. But it's in a totally different area. that area was, you know, meant for homes, because nobody's gonna go back there to go shopping. We're talking about a piece of land that is a prime piece of real estate for the town of Farragut to do what we want with. We have all kinds of residential there.
On the other hand, just looking at counterpoint, that what makes this lively is if you're my target market, then you're gonna drive here. And I want people who will walk here. So I'm trying to populate this as well, so that this is the busy downtown that you want. Lots of stores and excitement, and it's 2 blocks deep. But I want people who are gonna be here populated day and night, even after you've gone back home. So,
I wanted to make the same point. The most exciting mixed-use environments, I don't like the word town center because it doesn't adequately describe the
Yeah.
energy. The most exciting mixed-use environments I've seen in many, many cities that I've been in where I'm living in multifamily
yeah,
is places where you blend together a heavy density and a lot of residential to support the retail and the commercial, and a lot of retail and commercial to energize the residential. So you strip out residential here, and once again, we've got another Turkey Creek. Maybe it's a little denser, but it's another Turkey Creek.
My suggestion wasn't to get rid of it. I think the residential above commercial
Yes.
is a prime thing. I came from a community where we did that. They worked out great, but
you're
You're
saying
talking
we
about
could really
50%.
convert, you're saying we could convert some of this to more passive kinds
well,
of
you could do an
recreation.
amphitheater, a hotel, you could do a park, you could do all kinds of stuff. Here's the problem when you have that much residential in that area. Those people, when it first opens, are gonna go there all the time. And then all of a sudden, those people are gonna drive off to other areas to see something new, unless you have everything right there.
I see.
And, you know, this is reachable from a lot of different neighborhoods, especially with the greenways that Farragut's been doing, the bike trails and all that. I mean, there's plenty of ways to get into this lot right here. But having single-family homes, I mean, that's 1/3 of your total plot plan there is for single-family homes. You know, those are the people that are gonna be driving, you know, they're gonna have garages and all those other things, able to get out of there. Having the residential above your commercial, I think if we're gonna do any residential at all, would be the perfect scenario for a piece of property like this.
Okay.
I think everybody looks at that and probably visualize something a little different. What I visualize is being the back end of this being some parking, and then the commercial, the boutiques, the cafes, the ice cream shops, the law offices, kind of whatever it might be, businesses on the ground floor. The center of that, maybe a 2-block area would be greenery. An area with parks, gazebos, 2 blocks. So you could stroll through an area, you want to relax and have a cup of coffee, watch the kids play, whatever. But a casual area where you can mingle and relax. So greenery through the middle of it, you can be able to walk with you,
Good point.
spend some time.
Okay. Other thoughts? Go on, give me your best shot here. Don't often get a chance.
Is this the area the town's locked into as far as where to put a town center?
No, in fact, it's not all that realistic because the owners told us it's off the table.
Unless you have the right number now.
He said it's no longer a town center, what part of no, don't you understand?
Well,
So,
it's the financing of that is almost impossible.
yeah, it's got some,
Because you gotta build the whole thing, you gotta build the commercial for the people that are gonna live there, you gotta build the residential, so all of a sudden you got $40 million before you started getting your money back.
yeah,
Because, I mean, I saw some in Louisiana, and they spent a fortune, but you had to put, like, they had an exercise place, a coffee shop, all these things were there, theater.
yeah.
It was all there, but they had to build the whole thing to create the synergy to make it work. And
Right.
so financing is almost non-existent for that type of building.
Okay, so, let's see what other options. What kind of other options do you think we got here? Let's zoom back out again, turn that off, Chase, and then, so we looked around a little bit in this general area, and we said, how about this West End place over here? Cadets over by the high school, next to the intermediate school. So, we thought, now turn this off so we can see what's there now, Chase. So here we got lots of parking, we got McDonald's, we got the Russell House, Russell House number 2 is here, we got Taco Bell.
I think that this is actually really, I mean, when we drove into town last night, this thing was just teeming with activity, and I think personally, it's an
Yeah.
interesting opportunity for a node.
Yeah. So then what could we do with this place? We talked to the owners and they gave us permission to play around with it. And so we did. Oops, sorry. So get us oriented north.
So north, back.
So we looked around at some patterns, and so we said, okay, maybe parking in the middle, parking over here, and we could take that existing shopping center and actually leave it. Okay, put a street in front of it. And you want to pop those buildings up, Chase?
Oh, these ones?
Yeah.
Not sure actually. Sorry.
So if we took those existing buildings and, they've got little, the owners kept them up as well as possible. And they've got some, canopies and shade stuff. Right up 15. And we could maybe do something like that. Sometimes we place Stump, the designer here, to create something for him to draw.
Who is gonna build on that?
Well, I suspect that
I mean, I think,
property owners might.
let me back up. I mean, I think your point was actually really great about this greenfield development and how it's a big commitment. That you have to do huge swaths of it to gain this energy altogether. Versus this, where it's already sort of in an existing, at least node, it's already a built environment with some level of activity in it. This is something that can be done in a much more piecemeal fashion. One development happens, another, as long as they start to, as long as there's a common framework that they start to build around, then it's something that can happen much more naturally over time. But I think what Jeff was about to say is that this isn't necessarily something that one developer builds in one spot.
If it would be possible to use the old Kroger store, which is right across the street, for some sort of community center, then you don't, that's another building that's existing but needs modification. You've already got parking.
So the old Kroger store is up here.
Isn't this it?
This is the
Yeah,
next.
so they were.
The old Kroger store is right across from West
There,
End,
so-
basically across from
Yeah.
West End.
All the way to the
That's
right.
the two city.
That's the Olado. Oh, no, that's, it's right,
I thought we were
yeah,
watching.
yeah.
Right,
It's
right
right
there.
across the street.
And two big box stores that are empty, that
Yeah.
need to do something.
So we were trying to imagine, kind of a, as Chase said, kind of a piecemeal approach, if we could again talk about some parking variances and be able to, go back closer. The real number that we tend to find is sort of 1.5 to 2 parking spaces per 1,000. So rather than equal or greater square footage of parking, you have about half as much square footage of parking as you do in a building. And that, across the board for successful downtowns, that seems to be about right.
But what's key in that is that it is mixed use, so that you can double up. So when someone's at work, someone's also working right below their residence.
And using that same parking space.
Um,
Okay.
One factor with that area a long time ago, there was a grocery store and a drugstore in that shopping center. And, one factor that I heard people at both locations talk about was the fact that they had a period of time twice a day when people like me would not go to the grocery store or the drugstore, whatever, because of the traffic from the school.
Okay.
And it's gotten worse instead of better, I think, with more and more students having cars, as well as the traffic of parents coming and going. But that was a big factor at the time to the manager of both of those stores.
Okay.
Plus that area right there during.
You think that's a fatal flaw? Excuse me.
The people at the time of those two businesses thought so. And just to be honest, I stayed away. I didn't want to get mixed up in traffic with 16, 17, and 18-year-olds
Yeah.
driving, and I don't know how many cars are up there. There's probably
Right.
500+ cars coming and going twice a day there.
Okay. Somebody, however, earlier said that that was a magnet and would give life to a downtown, so.
Well, I think it is, except if something could be done to funnel that particular traffic, and it's just twice a day for what, 30 minutes?
Right, we just shut it down for a while, get those kids in and out.
Zoom out just a bit on that picture. Earlier, the first part of this conversation was about where's the center of town.
Yeah.
And you've got two stars there. If you were to move up Kingston, take the bottom left of Kingston Pike Gas Station, move it, it's right there, back about there. That to me is the center, because you've got your schools, you've got retail already, town halls on the left. You're talking about a half-mile radius. I think when you take that into account, there's more retail there. You've got two big box stores that are empty where there's room for development. A lot of parking, some vacant land there that can be used for other things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the traffic patterns of Campbell Station is the reason that other stores vacant.
What's that?
The traffic patterns that were created when they changed Campbell Station. Everybody goes because they're going to the interstate, where they used to go down Concord Road, that's not traveled as much anymore. So that eliminated that area for being a commercial area.
But from a pedestrian standpoint, do we want it Campbell Station and Kingston Pike, or do we want to move it up a little bit closer to the schools and closer, you know what I'm saying, get away from the real busy intersection?
Well, you might. Yeah. And that was where Eddie's property was, it's kind of right off. Not right on the road, but it's right off of it, close enough to get there. I think you're trying to build synergy where most of the people are gonna live there, they're gonna shop there, do the thing, you know.
Okay. What are other pros and cons of this area?
Well, I think one of the pros is the location to the schools on Friday night, that's a bustling area. I think one of the cons is we have a vacant Kentucky Fried Chicken that's been in there for 6 months now, and if it was such a draw of an area, you would think that somebody would be looking at that or pick it up. I think what we're doing is putting the cart before the horse here, when we've got so much vacant commercial right now that's vacant, and we're talking about building more stores and shops, and we can't fill what we have vacant now. I honestly think that this is neat for in the future, but if we can't support what we already have built, why would we want to build more?
It's a really-
That one little strip of stores, just in the last 6 months or so, there's 2 or 3 gone out, and there's not very many stores that are.
I can tell you right now, the only ones that are gonna come in and fill the existing stores without a change in pattern is gonna be tattoo parlors. So,
Well,
you
you
know,
had a high
something-
in there.
you're not gonna just fill them the way they are. They're just gonna continue to go downhill, so the pattern's gotta change somehow.
Help me to understand, is that, all that land owned by one owner?
No, this is all,
There's an assembly of different
this
pieces
is all
owned by
medical
one
campus in here, right?
Right, and who owns all the
I
land
think
that you're
the
identifying?
property owners, I think, own
Issue on the bunch of that.
pretty
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sam Ishu
Yeah,
owns some of
Sam.
it, but there's not a lot, but he doesn't own all of it.
And Tom.
You know, and speaking as a developer, not in a negative way, but what developers like is ease of access to the land as opposed to the complexity of dealing with that one woman over there who owns that one, or man, who owns that one parcel that absolutely will not sell, and all of a sudden now you're caught up with being really kind of a hostage to the last person wanting to deal with you. And you've got a real problem of really energizing something that has a comprehensive sense, so it happens in pieces. When things start happening in pieces, like you described early on, zoning and land use planning start to collide with one another. Because then the owner of the land has an appetite to do something that's not necessarily conducive to achieving what the land use plan wanted to achieve. So the real problem when you have complex ownership structures is it's tougher to achieve that outcome than it is when you have greenfields or brownfields, but owned by one or a very few number of people.
Let me ask you this, since you don't live here and you're an outsider. We have, in what I consider the town center, which is Kingston Pike and Campbell Station, we have two restaurants that have been vacant for several years that, to me, are prime pieces of real estate. In your opinion, why do you think they're still vacant?
I would, another thing, I would ask the question, what were they? What was the use that failed?
Restaurants?
They did good.
Oh, one was outstanding.
Oh, yeah.
Edison
That should
Park.
open
Edison
back
Park is
up.
probably the best restaurant out
Yeah, we got scared off by Flemings and stuff because of the Turkey Creek.
there.
And they're right next door to one another. And that's, I don't know if everybody considers that the city center, but it is the hub.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the street, we've got major retail
You got
that
post office here, correct, so you got a
No,
contract.
this is the post office. Yeah, this looks like it's,
It's a dying strip
It
center.
could be
I would,
redeveloped.
I would suggest that this is a very similar feel to Turkey Creek, so you've got the same draw. It's a drive-in, you come and park, but because Turkey Creek has much more activity there, you have drive-in and park up there, people are gonna go there rather than down here. It's the same type of
newer is
market.
better.
Absolutely. I think Turkey Creek has sucked the life out of a lot of places.
Sure has.
And that's not a negative, that's just the reality of it, and Turkey Creek's incredibly successful.
Turkey Creek's had a lot of turnover in restaurants, like, I think that there's one place that's now closed, it's been at least 3 restaurants that make.
Well, it's all under the
Turkey
ownership
Creek.
too.
Because it's,
Yeah.
there's just, you can eat out every day for a month in Turkey Creek and still not get through all the restaurants.
Well,
Turkey Creek's got some great advantages. Turkey Creek's got the interstate, it's got an interchange right there, and they're doing a marvelous job of taking advantage of all that. And that's why they've got not only the town of Farragut, but they got easy access for the region. So that's a real advantage. Now, the reality of that means that all of the rest of us have got to rethink our mission in life and who we're catering to now.
Talk a little bit about the rent prices and all. There's been a few things over in Turkey Creek that I have heard have closed because they just can't make the money to pay the rent over there. But at the same time, some of the places here, I know people who have left because of the rent. What can be done? And again, the town can't dictate those things at all, but it's a major factor.
That's just a reality, and I used to have an office in my town. There's a pedestrian mall, and 4 million visitors a year to this pedestrian mall. And I had an office on the mall on the 2nd floor above a t-shirt shop, and we were doing great there. We would have been there today, except along came somebody else who had a high-tech firm and 25 employees, and they wanted it more than I did. And so the rent went from $12 a square foot to $22 a square foot on the 2nd and 3rd floor, and I couldn't afford that anymore. So I moved up to the north part of town, and now we're above the bakery store. And so that's just the reality of the rent. Now, also, part of what we're struggling with is that there's a kind of a time lapse problem, okay? Somebody thinks their property is worth a whole lot more than the rest of the world thinks it's worth, so it sits vacant for a long time until either the economy rebounds or reality sets in. And wherever that happens, then it finds its way. But unfortunately, for many of these centers, the meeting ground is tattoo parlors and other kinds of uses that are a step down from where they were 5 years ago. And then 5 years from now, they'll be a step down below that, as long as there's something new. And even Turkey Creek's gonna have to keep its panache going. It's gonna have to have some attractiveness, because there will be another bigger, newer, better down the road.
Someone made the comment that, what's driving some of the, I guess, cannibalism of commercial is new. New is always shinier and better.
For 6 months.
But that's exactly right. It's a process of continual cannibalism. So I think that, whatever happens here is gonna have a really hard time competing with Turkey Creek.
Well, it's gotta be different.
Well, what's the end of it?
You gotta have people like this in Bearden, that are high-end art stores, high-end furniture stores, those kind of things that will attract people that live in Farragut, and maybe people from outside. Turkey Creek, their success is off the interstate, just from 9 or 10 counties. It's not from Farragut. Farragut can't support Turkey Creek.
That's exactly right. So what's the antidote to newer, bigger, better? What tools are in our toolbox?
Concentration in energy.
And high level of income. You got the family income in Farragut,
Yeah.
right?
But as long as I can drive and park, once I'm in my car, it's 5 more minutes to get to somewhere bigger, better, faster. So what's my antidote to that?
It is.
It has to be walkable.
Concentration.
It has to have people living there. That's your captive audience. That's the base level of
It has
clientele
to
that
be.
are gonna help you sustain it, just like the interstate sustains Turkey Creek.
It has to be timeless. It has to be something where newer isn't better. It has to be something that is an established place. There's gonna be a commitment to this always being the place in town.
Yeah, we're not trying to build a newer, fancier here, because we'll never win that game. We never will win
I
that
think
game.
you'd want to make it look as old as you could, antique it a little, or whatever you want to call it. You have your restaurants, you have a saloon, you have, all these different things, something that's different than everybody else.
Yeah, as we said at the beginning of the meeting, if we just build something 25 years old or 50 years old, people,
Right.
they haven't been off the
The key is you gotta start with something to draw people. We've been talking in Santa Farragut, quite some time about a town, a community center. And I think Pigeon Forge is a good example. They've got a beautiful, there's a Pigeon Forge or Severe, a beautiful community center over there. If you build a community center, it's gonna draw a lot of people. Then maybe the retail and the rest will grow around it. But you gotta start with something.
Now, let me just caution you about the community center and the recreation center. If you want to cater to your whole community,